Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again, here with the part 2 reaction of Mr. Big Phil Campion on the Team House podcast. So let's jump back in.
Isn't it? So,
right.
Yeah, I probably didn't think the way as a lot of soldiers do, which was, obviously, one-sided, we're this side, you're that side. No. I tried to pick out every level of the argument. And like I said...
Speaking of bad excuses, what was our son's again?
I have no time for anybody who wants to try and settle arguments or scores by using means of terrorism. I've got no time for it. Do you know what I mean? You can all have the red carpet treatment from me as far as I'm concerned. Do you know what I mean? And I'm better off, this planet's better off without you, to be honest. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And what was your, personal experience like over there patrolling or doing essentially counterinsurgency work, right?
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time. In the first couple of years I was there, I was in a normal rifle company, and we spent a lot of time patrolling, reacting to incidents. There wasn't loads and loads of incidents. I mean, in the time I was there in 2 years, I probably got blown up once. And it was in the vicinity of a shooting maybe twice, do you know what I mean? But I never actually got shot at. So, it's not like your Iraq and Afghanistan's where it's kinetic, it's full on, it's fighting all the time. I mean, the IRA once said a very true thing to say. They said, the British soldiers have got to be lucky all the time. We've only got to be lucky once. Do you know what I mean? And that was very true. So, that was, I think it was Martin McGuinness said that, and it was true. You had to pound those streets. You had to patrol them, for long periods of time, all around the clock, every day of the year, and you had to mind what you did. Do you know what I mean? Because if you set patterns, if you presented yourself as a target, or if somebody thought they could take you on, they would take you on. Do you know what I mean? So you had to ride it the whole time you were there. Do you know what I mean? So I'm probably sure that, and you would never know there's figures on this for a fact, but the way that we did things and the way that we switched on probably saved our lives more than we will ever understand. Do you know what I mean?
So, man, I bet that must have. I have no clue about the issues, the history between the Protestants, the Catholics, all that stuff that was happening in and around that space. I don't know what either side did. It's not something that I've looked into, largely because it was never a place that I was being expected to go to. I'd heard about it, heard some of the sadness and stuff in terms of bits and pieces that you would hear from time to time. And then even when I met with and worked alongside some ex-22 SAS guys more in the private space, in the private sector, even they never really spoke about it, their time and their tours and stuff over there, whether that's because they were still carrying some heavy stuff from their time serving there, or whether it's just, they didn't want to talk about it. And saying that, I never heard any, I know I didn't ask any of them about it. I didn't hear any of the other Kiwi operators ask any of the UK 22 lads about Northern Ireland or anything like that. So that may have been one of the reasons why as well, why I never heard them talk about it. But yeah, it must have been tough, man, during that time for both sides. But that's an interesting statement, what Phil just said. The British soldier, the UK soldier, has to be lucky all the time, or 100% of the time. They only need to be lucky once with regards to, them potentially having an impact on the British forces, on the soldiers. So yeah, those that are well educated in that space, if you feel like you want to drop down some history, some points from whichever point of view, whatever, hey, it's welcome here. It'll sit on the comments for everybody else to have a look at and possibly reply to, respond to, whatever. Like I said, I'm no expert, so don't be surprised if my reply is pretty brief to your comments or any input that you might want to put in. Anyway, let's get back to Big Phil.
Well, I mean, 2 years is a pretty long pump too. I mean, so by the time you're out of there, it's 91.
You did rotations. So you did six. I think you did something like 6 weeks on guard, which was absolutely monotonous. It was brain crushing. It was like you were in those towers, you were looking out, you were doing rotations of 4 on, 4 off, So you do about 6 weeks of that, and then you do what was called a waterside tour, which was like a patrolling tour, but of a softer area. And then you'd go into a city tour for 6 weeks. So they were sort of like, and then you'd have about 4 or 5 weeks off. So they were sort of like 6-week cycles. And the reason you only got 4 or 5 weeks off was because either end of that time off, you did a bit of training to top up in case there was skill fade and all that sort of stuff. So it was, yeah, it was full on. It was 2 years, and that 2 years went by, boom. Do you know what I mean? It was gone. It was quick. And like I say, you spent a lot of time having to switch on when, you know, they were difficult times. And like I say, when something did happen, you could end up on the ground for, you know, 48 hours without coming in, you know, and that would be tough. You know, guys would be absolutely hanging out there. Do you know what I mean? It was hard work.
And at the same time, I mean, you are cutting your teeth. You're getting a lot of experience as a soldier, presumably making what, corporal and then sergeant.
No, right. So, Jesus Christ, I probably made Lance Corporal by the end of that. In fact, I don't even think I made Lance Corporal by the end of that tour. I probably onto my carder to get the Lance Corporal, but didn't get my Lance Corporal, I don't think, by the end of that tour. No, I wasn't getting promoted anytime soon, because every time they gave me more than 5 minutes off, I went and had a fight in the pub or something like that. You know what I mean? So I was an absolute nightmare. I couldn't keep myself out of trouble for more than 5 minutes. I mean, I did 21 days in the nick over there for a fight I'd had in a bar in Northern Ireland itself. Do you know what I mean? I got 21 days. Me and a good friend of mine, Hammy, who's actually involved with this with me now. We've been friends. You'll never amount to nothing, they said. That's what I said. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, we got 21 days. And I remember they locked us up for 21 days. But locking up in the military, Nick, they tried to make an example of us. So they gave us like loads of fitness to do. We'd pull this fire cart around the camp, and we were always on display being beasted. Like, I mean, I loved that. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm happy with that. Do you know what I mean? I was fit as a butcher's dog then. I really was proper fit. So none of that bothered me whatsoever. Do you know what I mean? I'll say, right, yeah, just keep it coming, fellas. Do you know what I mean? I'm all
hard case listening to Big Phil talking about that in the nick, in the jail, or I'm guessing the military prison for getting into the fights and whatever other mischief he might have got up to. But it's interesting to hear him say that, because I know, not through experience, thankfully, but I know at the time, whenever anybody went and served time in the like the military prison down in Burnham, because I had a very good friend who made some decisions which weren't very good, and he ended up being down in the military prison down in Christchurch in Burnham at the time. Man, he come back fit as he was blowing all of us out of the water. Like he was never really like at the back of PT, but he wasn't at the front of PT either. He was probably lucky if he was sort of middle, maybe towards the back end of the middle of the group, which is still pretty decent. At least I thought anyway, because that's where I was. but when he come back, he was just blew all of us away. Like, and by then I was reasonably fit. I'd gotten pretty fit just through the training that I'd been doing. But far out, man, could he run and not be out of breath and just blitzed us. It was pretty impressive to see. So we'd heard some of the stories and stuff around people when they end up in that, if they end up down in that place, and them coming back being super fit. Well, here I got to see a real life example of one of my mates come back he was super fit when he come back after his time down there. So not surprised hearing Big Phil talk about, you know, them getting beasted or whatever with a lot of PT. It's it clearly was a good tool that was used, and it helped my mate in that anyway. So
all right with that. 21 days in Nick, I'll come out even fitter than what I went in. I thought it was great.
So what was the next stop for you after Northern Ireland?
Back to the UK. Literally, the time I was in. So you did the odd exercise overseas. I mean, we did Kenya. That was quite good fun. We did Denmark. But we didn't really do anything other than if you weren't in Northern Ireland, you were getting ready to go to Northern Ireland. It was like that. You know, it's, you know, in the first 10 years I was in the military, I spent 5 of them in Northern Ireland. At least, probably 6.
Wow.
So it was Northern Ireland all the time. And like I say, you did the odd overseas exercise, Kenya, Kenya springs to mind. That was, I mean, it was fun, but you only did about 6 or 8 weeks out there. Do you know what I mean? It was, yeah, it wasn't. It probably wasn't the best time to be there because of this Northern Ireland thing going on all the time. Do you know what I mean? If you were lucky, you might get to Bosnia. You might get, later on in sort of like that 10 years I was in the Green Army, but it wasn't. It wasn't the Iraq and Afghanistan era. And even now, I mean, they're running around all over the world, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't that when I was in. It was Northern Ireland, or it was Northern Ireland, really. Do you know what I mean?
Wow, that's interesting to hear Big Phil talk about that because, I guess even now to this day, 22 SAS, and the UK military, I think in general, man, they're involved everywhere. It seems like anyway, and definitely the lads from 22 SAS. I don't know about the guys in SBS, but the lads in 22 SAS were definitely held in high regard here in NZ and in Australia, and definitely seen as a very high tempo operational unit for the longest time, and hence why I've mentioned other times. Hence why a lot of the Kiwi badged guys would go over, apply to. I don't know what that process was, but I'm assuming obviously they've applied and been accepted to get on to the selection, and then they've gone over there and done the selection, and then gone on to progress and join as a badge member within 22 SAS. So there's quite a few that have gone over there. Actually, while I'm on that, there have been a few people that have asked, do you have to do the selection when you go over, and is the reverse true? So if Kiwis want to go to Australia or the UK, do they have to do the selection, blah, blah, blah. And from what I understand, yeah, that is, things may have changed now, so don't quote me on that. But at least during my time, yeah, that was something that had to happen. As far as I'm aware, between New Zealand and Australia, maybe there's a change now, or maybe there's some type of agreement. I don't know about that. Definitely any New Zealanders or Australians going to the UK, actually I shouldn't say definitely, as far as I'm aware, you still have to go through the selection, and I think so you should, regardless of whichever one you go to. There's people that will say, those from 22 shouldn't have to do the selection for any other SAS unit because they founded the unit, blah blah blah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's an opinion, eh? My thoughts, even though I was confident in my ability to get through the Australian selection, even though I was confident if I went to go to the UK that my ability, my mindset, the skills that I had developed, and my willingness to learn whatever it was that they wanted me to do and how they wanted me to do it, there's no guarantee. I've seen plenty of people, and other badged operators will tell you the same thing. You see plenty of people that talk the talk, like that say that they've prepared, that they've done everything that they can, that they've left no stone unturned, that they are coming in as prepared as they're ever going to be, etc., etc., etc. Like, the fact is, nobody really knows. I didn't know, and I wouldn't know unless I went and did the selection here in NZ and in Australia. I can say all I like about 22 and thinking that I would get in there or that I would pass, but I don't know. I have no idea unless I went over and did the selection course. Now, is the reverse true to coming back to the original point that I was talking about? Sorry about that. Does anybody from the UKSF have to do selection to come join the NZ and the Australian unit? For NZ, as far as I know, I think that that's the case. However, there may be some type of agreement or whatever, whereby it may just be a case. I don't know. When I was there, I never heard of anybody from UKSF looking at joining the NZ Special Air Service Regiment. There was one person that I know of that changed over from UKSF, from the SBS, to the Australian Special Air Service Regiment. I'll talk about that soon. But much for the same reasons that I've spoken about in other videos, and even to a degree here in this video, people join the SF because they want to be utilised for the job. The Kiwis that were badged here in NZ and then decided, wherever it was in their career progression, that they wanted to join the UKSF. They made that decision, but they went over there to the UK because they wanted to be utilised, and UK gets utilised a heck of a lot in terms of operations and jobs that they do around the world. So that's why those guys went. Now, the guy that came in from SBS, as far as I know, he didn't need to do or didn't do the SASR selection. Well above my pay grade, don't ask me why. Hey, the decision is the regiment's to hold and to own and to go through, not mine. And from what I understand, he may have done some courses during one of the reinforcement cycles, just to, I guess, make sure that he's comfortable, or not so much that he's comfortable, but make sure that the unit is comfortable with his aptitude and his ability to implement and do the things the way that they expect them done. And also probably a bit of a gauge for him, but I'm assuming he chose to leave the UKSF to come join the Australian Special Air Service. So, it seemed pretty clear of his intentions and his commitment to want to come. Do I think he should have had to do the selection? Personally, just my personal take, I think regardless of where you go and who you are, I think you should have to do the selection. That's just my personal take. Whether you are a Victoria Cross winner or a Conspicuous Gallantry Cross winner or Silver Star, Star of Gallantry winner, etc., whatever accolades, things that you've done, huge respect. But I think going into any SF unit, whichever country that you have the opportunity or privilege to step foot onto the start line for, that's just my personal take. Would I work with SF guys from UK, from Australia, from New Zealand, from America, from Canada, from other parts of the world that were aligned with those with the Five Eyes? 100% I would love to work with them. I would love to learn from them. Yeah, it would be awesome. Would they want to work with me is probably a question you want to ask them. But I think there's value in each country and each place having their selection process to identify, recruit, select the types of people that they want for their unit. And I've mentioned in other videos, each of those countries, each of their processes is tried, tested, and proven for their area, for their country. Yep, likely a heck of a lot of crossover into other countries, but the processes that each country has, it is what it is, and they're going to keep rolling that process out because it works. So that's my rant and my cordial on that anyway, just on the back of listening to Big Phil talking with the team house operators. So let's jump back into here. And that was on the back of him talking about his 10 years, his first 10 years, probably 5 or 6 of that was in Northern Ireland. It was either getting ready for Northern Ireland, or you were in Northern Ireland, or you were doing a couple of trips, like you mentioned, to Kenya, and I forget where the other place was where he said that they went to.
And that was one of the reasons I decided to go Special Forces, because, in my time, Gulf War One, I was in Northern Ireland during Gulf War One. I sat watching all these people going to war, and I sat in Northern Ireland with me thumb up me obvious. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I want to go to war. Do you know? And then I read all the books that came out after Gulf War One. Andy McNabb's Bravo 20, Chris Ryan's The One That Got Away, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, these people are doing some proper work here.
Yeah.
And I'm still, I did some decent jobs in Northern Ireland. I did a couple of long-haired jobs over there where we used to hide in bushes and take photos and all that sort of stuff. But it still wasn't Special Forces. It wasn't, doing what these other guys were doing, which was, actually getting involved, getting your hands dirty, and ultimately getting out and putting a few people, flat packing a few people up. Do you know what I mean?
So, go ahead, Dave.
Phil, I wanted to ask, because 1989, like it's late into the Troubles, right? It's been going on for decades now. And, so you had like the IRA and the UVF and UVA and all them. But then you also had like these loyalist groups.
So UVF are loyalists. So you got the UVF, the UVA.
Okay.
Yeah, the defense. There was loads of them. And there was loads of them on the other side as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you also had like the like anarchists, like, just people coming in to stir shit up, I guess. What was your role? when you went over there, I think that the image, at least in American minds, if we're not really well read on that era, is like, okay, you're going over there to stop the RA, but are you basically trying to keep peace amongst them all?
It was very much a peacekeeping thing. You weren't going over there to go after the IRA. You were going over there to keep two communities at bay and from each other's throats, basically. And don't forget, when they first went out there, when they very, very first went out there, they had what was called the honeymoon period, where the Catholic community actually welcomed the troops because they were keeping the other side at bay, and they were actually sort of like, right, something's going to get done here. Well, nothing did get done, and things turned sour, and it came the other way. So, yeah, it was very much a peacekeeping thing. It was very much, patrolling the streets, trying to avoid normal folk from getting sucked into something that they didn't want to be sucked into. And I'll tell you for now, if you walked around those estates, you would probably find, say, for instance, some of the women might spit at you or, call you a name or something like that. But they would have to do that because if they were seen doing anything else, once you weren't there, somebody would be pulling her hair, setting her on fire, beating her up. Do you know what I mean? So you had that. You knew what the score was deep down. You knew who the scumbags were. You knew where they lived. You just weren't allowed to do anything about them unless you caught them red-handed. And that was always a difficult bit for us, catching them red-handed. But, when they went back, I did chuckle because when they went back to all these historical cases and they've tried to do people who've shot people and all that sort of stuff, and they said, well, we're going to arrest all these people for historical crimes. In essence, you could arrest me for attempted murder because I did try my hardest. I just never got nobody.
Right.
This guy, man, his personality, his storytelling, his description of things, man, crack up, hard case. He is able to lift the mood, eh? And I mentioned that in that first reaction when he's talking about his upbringing. But listening to Big Phil, it's a pleasure, man, just to hear him. But pretty sad. That's rough, man. Going in there, the honeymoon period that he spoke about. The Catholics welcomed UK forces. They were keeping the others at bay. Then things turn on them. Then all of a sudden they're getting spat at and abused and far out. It must have been rough, man, for those soldiers having to go through that period, that time, during that period where it sounds like it was very heavy. Obviously, it'd been going on for a long, long time. I think I heard them say decades prior to that. Pretty nuts. What we as human beings and people are capable of, in terms of just get a thought in our head and then that's it. We hate those people, or we hate that person, or we hate that thing. Like that one person has done something, so therefore all of them are scum or whatever. It's pretty, man, it's hard to understand how we're wired, how people are wired, all of us in our own, different ways, but the impact that we can have as well on people, just from one person to a small group of people influencing blanking nations, countries. Unreal.
So, Phil, tell us about, you mentioned how special forces came into your mind. Talk to us about like when you made that decision to go to selection and how that all came about.
Okay, so right, it is a bit of a story, as everything is with me. So I'd seen the special forces. They'd accompanied us on a trip we did to Kenya. So they'd been to the jungle with us, and they ran. There was two of them there, ran a small school, and that was when I first saw them cutting about different weapons, different gear. And I thought, yeah, that's a bit of me, that is. And then we saw them in Northern Ireland. So the job I was doing was called COP, Close Observation Platoons, and they were trained by. Used to have a couple of SAS guys on the course training you to do that, and they were really good guys, and you could see they knew what they were doing, and they had all the gear, they had long hair, they just reeked of being professional, and you looked at them and you thought, I want to be like that. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I did P Company. I'd done my commando course, and I did P Company, which is the parachute regiment's course, and I went behind my commanding officer's back, and I asked the brigade commander if I could join Free Para, who were based in Dover. Now, that's sort of like unheard of. I'm supposed to ask my platoon sergeant, let alone the go. Do you know what I mean? But I've gone completely above everybody in my unit and gone to the brigade commander, a guy called Johnny Holmes, Brigadier Johnny Holmes. Well, I picked up the phone to Johnny when I was on duty one day, and I said, Johnny, can I go to the... Well, I didn't say Johnny. I said, sir, it's Lance Corporal Campion here from from the 2nd Battalion, the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment, and I'd like to join the Parachute Regiment. And he sort of like, he got the, he sort of like went to me, went, Lance Corporal, who was it? The Campion, I don't want to join. Yes, I can sort that out for you. And he like hung up. And about 2 seconds later, as I'm walking back to the guard room, I can hear, Campion, get here, Campion. So I've called it, it's the RSM. The brigade commander's got off the phone to me. He must have gone, some cheeky gets just phoned me up. I phoned up RCO, who's stuck his head out the door, gone, RSM, Campion's causing trouble with the brigade commander. Like, you know what I mean? I'm in the shit now. I'm proper in the shit. I'm back.
I'm not surprised. I mean, I don't know how the UK system works, but the hierarchy, the chain of command, in terms of wanting to change or go somewhere else, he's called the brigade commander as a lance jack, or any position really, if you're not, further up or in those commissioned officer ranks. That's nuts. I wonder why he did that. I'm hoping he shares why he went straight to the brigade commander and not through his chain of command. Maybe the chain of command maybe there was something wrong there. Maybe he gave them a hiding and ended up in the nick for it.
The RSM's yelling at me. The adjutant's yelling at me. And they go, right, you've got to go in and see the CO. And I go in to see the commanding officer, and he starts yelling at me. And I did something I've never done before. I just lost it a little bit with rank. And I told him to F off. I was like, no, not having it, F off. I'm doing that. That's what I want to do. And he stood there and he looked at me and he went, Lance Corporal Campion, you have just reached your ceiling in an afternoon. You'll be going no further in your career here, so I suggest you go somewhere else. Anyway, at this point, there was a guy called Major Henry Egan, and Major Henry Egan was the regiment's 2IC. He's screaming, Campion, get in here. Now, I knew he was a half-decent bloke. He'd done P Company, had his wings, nice geezer. And I get in and he shuts the door behind me and he goes, Campion, he goes, you've really messed it up this time. He goes, you've probably got two options. I said, what are they then, sir? He says, Civilian Street. He said, you could get out. He said, because you're not going to get any grace around here anymore. He said, you could try Special Forces selection. He said, and I think you'd be suited to Special Forces selection. He says, yeah, fit you. You obviously like, you're not scared of a bit of work. He says, have a go at that. Come out of there, right? Went down, spoke to my platoon sergeant, put my paperwork in. Can I do Special Forces selection? And he sort of like laughed at me because no one had ever seen me in that light before, really. So he's gone, yeah, all right, whatever. Put the paperwork in. That's gone to the boss. That's gone to the CO. CO said, no, I'm not letting him go. I'm like, why not? He said, well, I want him to do 2 years in Northern Ireland as one of my top platoon patrol commanders. So we went to Northern Ireland. Sure enough, I was a cop patrol commander. Halfway through that tour, there was a ceasefire. And I got the message from the commanding officer, if you can get yourself ready, you can go on the next selection. And that was when I got let go. And I did get on the next selection, so yeah, but it was, and people always joke, people always say to me, what was the hardest part of selection? And it's very tongue-in-cheek, but I always say getting on it was the hardest part, you know what I mean? Because once I was on it again, I loved it, you know what I mean? It's extremely hard, it's a tough course, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute, but actually getting on it took me nearly 2 years. Do you know what I mean? Deciding I wanted to go, I got messed about all over the place. People, this, that, and the other, and before I know it, it took a long time getting on it.
Man, I think I heard him not talk about this story, but I think I heard him talk about in the series that he does about the UK SF selection course on his channel. It just sounds familiar, him saying that that line, what was the hardest thing about selection, and his tongue-in-cheek comment about the hardest thing about selection was getting on selection. Now I understand why he's saying that. Far out. He definitely didn't do himself any favours, like going to the Brigadier, then where he lost it a bit with the CO. And then the CO, to the CO's credit, as much as there was clearly some tension and disagreement or whatever the case may be, why Big Phil didn't want to go through the normal hierarchy and chain of command, credit to that CO for, he put down, no, not letting him go when his application first went in, said I want him to do 2 years as one of the cop patrol commanders. Can't remember what he said that was, close observation patrol or something like that, or platoon. And Big Phil, yeah, he knew where you wanted to go, so he's like, okay, I'll play the game. I'll give you the 2 years that you've asked for. And then during that ceasefire, full credit to that CEO to say, okay, if you can get yourself ready, you can go on the UKSF selection now. And yeah, sounds like Big Phil was always ready to go. Kept himself, what did he say, as fit as a butcher's dog. So yeah, and then he's on there. I think that's on 30 minutes now. So I'm going to wrap this one up here, but really enjoying this. I didn't get as far as I did with the first take because of my ramble and waffle during the section there about the selections with the different countries to try to answer some of the questions that have come through. But yeah, really enjoy this. Awesome listening to Big Phil. Much respect to these two guys from the Team House podcast hosts. I forget their name, but I'll suss out their names, get them sorted. Really enjoy the way that they bounce between each other and ask the questions. So much respect to them. And the questions that they ask seem really thoughtful and they're good as well. They let Big Phil go and tell his story, which is awesome. So anyway, appreciate you all. Appreciate any time that you spent here. Thank you very much if you've come along and watched or liked or commented or subscribed or done all of that. Thank you very much. As always, to anybody going through any challenges, difficulties, hard times, hardship, heartache, man, please keep turning up. Keep staying in the fight. Know that you're not alone. Know that the sun will shine again, that better days are coming for you, that there is a light at the end of that long, dark, and miserable tunnel. So just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep turning up. I promise you, better days are coming. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you